On Labour Lens, Nigerians join workers all around the world to celebrate an unusual International Workers' Day. Many believe for any country to celebrate workers, government and organized private sector has to start by taking workers seriously. Ellen, welcome to the program. I am Sharon Ijason. The conversation continues in a moment.
May 1 marks this year's celebration of the International Workers' Day. The day is dedicated to the celebration of the working class across the world for their contribution to wealth creation. Traditionally, it is a day marked across the globe with pomp and ceremony, characterized by rallies, parades, march pasts, and calling the attention of government to burning national issues. It is also a day the authorities renew their promises of improved working conditions for workers. But the outbreak of coronavirus has robbed the day of its glamour and fanfare. A few labor leaders and some rights activists came together at the NLC headquarters to commemorate the day.
The implication.
NLC President Ayuba Waba analyzes the devastating effects the pandemic has had on the economy and is worried that it is workers that will most likely bear the brunt.
We warn that the Nigerian Labour Congress will not take kindly to any attempt to offer workers as the sacrificial lamb for the inordinate emolument of public office holders.
And work in the other.
On its part, Nigeria's employers' body, NECA, wants a review of the relaxed lockdown.
The partial restriction of movement within states and full restriction interstate, which will limit employers' abilities to generate maximum income. We have appealed to government to review this time and allow also for night shift operations.
For health workers, the need to prioritize members' welfare is key at this time.
Environmental health officers, community health practitioners, health information officers, all these are veritable tools. So every health worker is a veritable tool to get this war over.
The civil rights community believes it is time the authorities at all levels leverage on the opportunities created by the pandemic.
The opportunity for the closure is enough for us to now bring out that thing. Look at the Civil War, for instance. It was during the Civil War that we were able to make our own machines, our own guns, our own, airstrips and all of that. This is another war. And when there is a war, creativity is unleashed.
In the struggle for our members, there is victory for us.
Though it's an unusual May Day celebration across the world, a lot of virtual meetings to commemorate the day took place across the world. While it may not be the usual colorful day, workers are still united to fight against several challenges facing them.
We believe that within our context, pensioners are one of the most vulnerable groups in our nation, as they are, of course, people with old men and women, most of who have become infirm as a result of age and therefore can no longer fend for themselves and their loved ones. Demographically, it is known globally that this segment of the society is most vulnerable to the pandemic.
At the United Labour Congress ULC May Day briefing in Lagos, Labour leaders were of the view that it is a moment of reflection for the world, especially Nigeria, on the significance of Workers' Day, the pandemic, and its aftermath.
The government should also come out with some kind of stimulus packages to some of these employers, but also waiving some of the tax regime, because definitely these are critical times. And sacrifices are also needed from both government and the employers, because the essence is that if hunger is not also defeated, that means we're giving room, to the COVID-19. So government and employers must always, collaborate in terms of what can they do. So I see the government extending, a longer hand in this instance by coming out with some policies. If it's packages or tax regimes, waivers, so that the companies themselves can also continue to stand.
We have a lot of options between us and the employers. The one that think it will be more profitable to them and also to us too as workers. But when we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. Well, my message is that, you know, a road is being created by one person. Many people will pass through the road. And nobody clap with one hand. We must gently walk together. And there's no way we will not get casualty. We are bound to have casualty. And whosoever survive it is just by the grace of God. And if you are affected, life moves on. But the most important thing as labor, we make sure we get your right for you. So that we can't just be thrown out. And that's the essence of being a unionized worker. If you are not unionized, like this period, the employer can just say, don't come tomorrow. And that's the end, nobody fight for you. But in this situation where you are a unionized worker and your employer says, go home, no, the union will resist it.
This will be the 130th edition of the event commemorating the International Day of Workers' Solidarity. The inspiration for a global day to demonstrate international workers' solidarity came from the struggle of American workers who have the 8-hour workday. The Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions passed a resolution in October 1884 that all employers must respect the right of workers to 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of sleep.
Actually, at this particular time, when we are even looking for the job for the people, even the people that are having the job to do, if you look at this critically, you know that they are finding it difficult. Talking about somebody who has a small job, anybody you see that is civil servant in Nigeria, he's at least there's about 8 to 10 people behind him. They are waiting for him to collect the salary so that he can share it. You know, in Nigeria, we believe we share it. So by the time you say this particular gentleman loses his job, now you are like killing about 10 people, which is not good. And I believe the federal government cannot do that. This is a time whereby we have to give palliative to our people. Because the more you bring more people to give them more jobs, the more better for the nation. And I believe that there's no... Even the private sector, they can't do that like that because I believe that there must be a condition of service or maybe a scheme of service. So no matter what, there's no, you can just employ people will happen without having the conditions. If something like this happens, pandemic like this happens, there must be a way out. So I don't believe that any person will just wake up today and say that he sacked his workers. I don't think it will never happen in Nigeria. With the way we are now, the best we can do.
Do you think it's the right thing?
It's not a right thing at all. No any thinkable person can do that. No matter what, we have to look at how we can do it. It's better for you to bring your workers so that we can sit down together to look how we can be able to talk together. This country is for all of us. If you sack them, are you going to bring another people? Those people, you know, in aviation industry, whether you like it or not, the more you stay longer, the more experienced you are. You can't just bring somebody today and say that he has to go and start working. So I think, I don't think there's anybody who can do that. Even the article that people are mentioning, I believe that after the lockdown, we'll sit down with the man and we'll look at it.
On the profile interview segments this week, I will be engaging with the organized private sector and the government to ensure that we have up-to-date information on how these different sectors are coping with the coronavirus pandemic and how it's going to affect Nigerian workers. Joining me right now is Director General of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Dr. Timothy Olawale. It's good to have you on the program.
It's my pleasure.
A lot is happening at the organized private sector, and how would you say the organized private sector is responding to the coronavirus pandemic in the workplace?
Well, the response of the organized private sector has been completed. From our end, we have to live with weeks of lockdown, which have been very devastating on businesses. Secondly, now we are anticipating a relaxation of the lockdown, which we can go back to work and productive activities. Now, there also is on us immense responsibility. Responsibility to ourselves as employers, to our workers, as employees, as well as to the society, to ensure that we safeguard lives and property, especially in view of the unseen enemy, the coronavirus, which is infectious at a slight contact, What we are doing as organized businesses is to set some sort of protocol. What we need to do before resumption of work in our factory, production, the office, what we need to do in the post work after resumption, the responsibility and roles of employees with regards to also guard lives, our relationship with clients, those that are visiting, and it changes our companies the entire world of work. And these are what we're setting protocols on, just to ensure that we balance safety with the economy.
Talking about balance, there's been a lot of reactions as regards the Federal Inland Revenue Services asking for an advance payment of tax. Many other countries across the world are talking about tax court, tax leave, or tax holiday. Here we are in Nigeria, the Federal Inland Revenue Service is already asking for the organized private sector to actually start remitting their tax. What's your take on this? How is your sector reacting to this development?
In fact, organized businesses receive that information with a dampened spirit, in that we had said for us to take jobs and for us to gradually recover from the impact of the COVID-19 and the lockdown. Government should also play its role of supporting organized businesses through palliatives and through stimulus packages. While we are still waiting for the government side on what government is going to do to support businesses, so that there are no losses of jobs, which will compound the unemployment situation in Nigeria. We received this news from FIRS asking businesses to pay taxes that are not due. The assumption which was noted that sectors in the economy that were operating must enjoy some sort of a boom, which was very erroneous. And what FIRS was enlightenment and education. Let me give an instance. Supermarkets, for instance, were opened so that there will be goods, consumer goods for citizens to buy and to survive during the lockdown. And that does not automatically translate to a boom, because these are supermarkets that were working from 7 a.m. in the morning to 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. before. Now they have to operate for just 6 hours every day. These are supermarkets that are endless queues of customers before. Even those customers.
So can you tell us the exact percentage of people that are actually at work in such a scenario, and how does this affect profitability of any business?
As a matter of fact, they even had to reduce the capacity of employees that were working in those sectors because they were not working optimally. So the average was 30%, between 30 and 35% of the workforce that were working. That is not to say those that were at home on account of the lockdown were still not being paid. Their salary was still being carried. In other words, profitability was reduced. But on top of that, we also have dual patronage, which have been put between 25 to 30%. The overhead cost has not reduced. And of course, we also know that because of the interstate restriction, goods were not also going out of most of the states or getting most of the states.
So very quickly, what would be your expectation as regards addressing the message from FIRS that organized private sector should start remitting their tax? What's your message? Take home on that.
The simple message is that there is a law provision which also states when taxes will be due. FIRS should abide to the rule of law, by the rule of law. They should wait until the taxes are due for payment. If they cannot do tax deferral or moratorium like it is being done in other climes, at least they should wait until the taxes are due, because most of the businesses are near bankruptcy. and they are just trying to work with the little capital they have. So it is intensive for them to start wiring such funds even into FIRS at this time.
Okay, very quickly, there was a press release by the organized private sector, which you happen to be the Director General of NECA, on ailing the president of the country, President Muhammadu Buhari, on implementing the Oresoya's report. Looking at the recommendations that this report actually is entailed, it's obvious that many parastatals will actually have to merge, many ministries might actually have to merge. Wouldn't it be that you're encouraging job court, and how will this affect the organized private sector, especially when it has to do with the ease of doing business?
Well, it does not necessarily have to lead to job losses or job cuts. There is what we call principle of natural wastage in the employment relationship. In other words, even if you want to reduce staff, you do not necessarily need to fire staff. You allow those that are retiring to go, or only you don't replace. You also must know that the nature will take its course. We are not praying for people to die, but people still leave services because of them. You don't replace. So naturally, until the civil service finally slims down naturally and fits into the appropriate side. But the important thing is what the implementation of the Rosoye panel report does for the economy. We have been complaining about the cost of governance being too high. We've been complaining about government not being able to service its budget, the excessive recurrent expenditure, the duplication in departments and ministry or agencies of government is also part of the major reason why we have this heavy overhead. If it is addressed, it means be able to free necessary funds for infrastructural development, for capital projects. So, and there are several other aspects of the economy that also need surgical operations like this. But it is commendable that eventually good reasoning is prevailing. The president has approved implementation of the panel report, which means that we have displayed political will to deal with the problem once and for all. But I want to say that there is no need for us to panic with regards to the loss of jobs, as long as government understands the principle of natural wastage and implements that along the way.
Thank you very much for joining us. The conversation continues shortly with the Minister for State for Employment. Though Labour Lens tried to reach out to get the government side to the rising concern of unemployment, slashed salaries and forced leave emerging from the coronavirus pandemic, the Ministry of Labour and Employment, which has two ministers, Dr. Chris Ngige and Festus Keyamo SAN, are yet to address the questions concerning its contributions and plans to cushion the effect of the novel coronavirus on workers. As the most populated country in Africa and the third world country where an average citizen lives on less than $1 a day, the thought of what will be the plight of workers cannot be imagined. Many workers have, for the past few weeks, have received pay cut, outright sack, forced leave, amongst others. Many other companies that have the wherewithal have chosen to hide under the coronavirus pandemic by choosing profit over people. Sadly, many workers have also refused to speak, perhaps optimistic that their employers will still call them back to work. The truth remains that before the pandemic, major financial institutions, oil and gas companies, and other private employers had made a norm of abusing workers' rights. Nigerian workers have been suffering the ailment of casualization of workers, outsourcing and insourcing of workers before the coronavirus pandemic. Though workers' union had done their bit, the Ministry of Labour needs to understand the responsibility given to them and be more proactive. Questions Nigerian workers are begging to be answered are: creation of unemployment departments across local governments in the state, looking into the books of employers to see if laying off workers is the best choice, field marshals to check if companies are complying, check companies and multinationals who have donated billions but are ready to sack at least 75% of their workers, ensure people are prioritized over profits. The need to stop immediate giving out of jobs to foreigners who are employed by companies that receive waivers from Nigeria government. And government should rethink thoroughly the privatization exercise, especially in public utilities, with a view to reacquiring them. Expand the reach and penetration of the COVID-19 palliative and make it more inclusive, cutting across every region and section of the country. Invest more in educational research institutes across the nation. And the call has been made that special funds should be created to help medium and small-scale enterprises, funds for workers who are ready to venture into informal sector, prioritize welfare of pensioners, cash transfer should be extended to workers on forced leave, and ensure the implementation of the new national minimum wage in states where it has not been implemented. And that's all we can take on today's episode of the program. It's expected post-coronavirus pandemic that workers will have free access to Medicare, education for every child, aggressive unionization of workers, and also the need to expand the social security net in the country. I am Sharon Ijason. Remember, labor creates wealth.